I do remember. It was a song like for my high school music class, and it was called Pretty Lies. And it was definitely sort of like an homage to Joni Mitchell because I was just obsessed with Joni Mitchell. And
This podcast is about you and your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
awesome.
Sweet.
Excited.
So first off, tell me where were you born and raised?
I grew up in Cape Breton, which is a little island on the east coast of Canada. And I was born in Sydney, Nova Scotia. So Cape Breton is like an island, Nova Scotia is the province.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, grew up there and then went away for school. And I've been in Halifax, Nova Scotia for the past 7 or 8 years.
Wow. So you grew up on the actual island?
Yeah, it's a really beautiful part of the world. It's like lots of beautiful mountains and beaches, and there's like a huge um like Scottish and traditional music scene there. Because a
Mhm.
lot of folks like migrated from the Highlands over to Cape Breton because it's kind of like just across the water. So grew up kind of surrounded by a lot of like Celtic music and all that fun stuff. But yeah, it was a great place to grow up.
Wow. I mean, was there like a school on the island? Like, how did you go to high school? Did you have to cross into Nova Scotia?
Oh no, it was like there's probably I don't know, there was like 30,000 people in my hometown.
Oh,
Like it
okay. It
wasn't
wasn't
like
like a little.
super small.
Because I spoke to other people from I forgot what part of Canada, but they had to like go across. Like they had to take like a ferry from the island they were living on, like into the main city. So I was just curious if you had a similar situation. It doesn't sound like it.
We're very spread out up here in Canada, so I don't doubt that that was the case, but
Yeah, you have a massive country.
Mhm.
Okay, right on. So grew up around a lot of Scottish Celtic music. You're saying, what was the
Yeah.
first instrument you learned?
I started taking piano lessons when I was like 5 or 6, so
Hmm.
probably piano. I have a picture in my studio at home of like my dad playing piano, and I'm like this big, just like a little baby on his lap watching him. But yeah, my dad played a lot of music growing up, so piano was just kind of in the living room, and I just gravitated towards that right away.
Right. Was he pro, like a professional musician, or did he just do it as a hobby?
Yeah, just as a hobby when I was growing up, but when he was a teenager, he was in like a rock band, which would have been like in the 70s, and they like toured around and actually got offered like a record deal, which back then was like a huge thing. And
Sure.
but they kind of decided like we already know this isn't really the path for us. Like they all broke up and kind of went to university and went their separate ways.
Uh-huh.
But it's kind of funny, like I think because of that, it's been an interesting journey, like him seeing me want to play music and kind of like supporting me through that. And I'm kind of like following the path that he never went down, which is interesting.
Right. I was gonna say he's probably living through you, like a what if kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. No, has experienced a lot of what I've gone through and been super supportive along the way, which has been nice.
That's awesome. So piano, how long do you still play piano to this day?
Yeah, piano's kind of my main instrument. I played piano like all growing up. Did the whole like classical RCM
Hmm.
Royal Conservatory training. And then in high school, I started to get more into songwriting. And it's funny, like I knew piano so well, but I never wrote songs on piano when I was first starting out. I picked up the guitar and suddenly it was like, oh, I really want to write songs on the guitar. Um, and then sort of like ditched the piano for a while because I'm a songwriter now. I play guitar. And then in recent years, I've been kind of back to more writing on piano. Piano is my first love.
Okay. When did you switch to guitar? High school? Like you said in your high school?
Yeah, in high school, I had a music teacher, kind of like a high school band teacher, music teacher, who really kind of encouraged everyone in our school, in our music program, to write their own songs and kind of like form bands and collaborate.
Wow.
Yeah, she was like amazing. I don't think I'd be playing music if it wasn't for her. But so when I was in high school, that's when I saw everyone like playing guitar and writing songs, and I decided I wanted to do that.
Sure. That's really cool. So there's a group of you playing and writing music?
Yeah, definitely. There was other like songwriters around my high school and kind of like around Cape Breton that were playing shows, and I kind of looked up to. There was like, yeah, a really cool songwriting scene at that time in Nova Scotia. There still is. It's just
Hmm.
like there's a huge songwriting tradition out here. So yeah, lots of people doing it to look up to.
What was the first time? Do you remember the first time that you wrote a song and showed it to someone?
I do remember. It was a song like for my high school music class, and it was called Pretty Lies. And it was definitely sort of like an homage to Joni Mitchell because I was just obsessed with Joni Mitchell. And yeah, I was probably pretty bad, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, obviously you kept doing it, right? I mean, it didn't wasn't that horrifying that you quit.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So did you continue? When did you start playing out? Was it once you gained some confidence there in the class, or?
Yeah, I like played a bunch of coffee houses, that sort of thing in high school. Um, and then I went for a year of university of just like an arts degree. And during that time, I was like, okay, this is like really what I want to do. So that's when I started kind of playing like sh small shows around, the local area, small like festivals and stuff. And then during the course of that year, I was like, no, this is something I want to take seriously. So I applied to music school off the island and went there for 4 years and studied jazz piano.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. I learned a lot. And during that time, like while I was doing my music degree, I started like playing in other bands and playing as a side musician and just continuing to write songs and work on my own artistry as well. And that's really where I got started, I would say.
Okay. It's interesting that you went in as a jazz piano player instead of like a singer-songwriter. Was there a
Mm.
reason why you went back to piano?
Well, I knew I wanted to study music, and there wasn't really programs like I know there's Belmont in Nashville and programs
Hmm.
like that that are more like songwriting, music industry focused, and there wasn't really anything like that here at the time. So
Okay.
to do a degree in music, it had to be like classical or jazz. And in my mind, I was like, piano, I have the background on piano. Jazz
Hmm.
seems like more applicable to what I want to do as a songwriter and to be like very versatile. Classical didn't make as much sense. So I just kind of went into jazz knowing that I didn't want to be a jazz musician, but kind of wanted to learn all those skills and get my chops up.
Right on. And you have
Yeah.
a bunch of you've co-wrote a bunch of songs with people. When did that start? Like, and did that kind of take over for your and like replace your solo career for a little while? I know you played in another band as well that had some success. Like, when did you
Mm.
start seeing some success as far as being an artist?
Sure. Well, I've always sort of done the songwriting thing, like while I was in university and stuff. Basically, I got into songwriting like seriously because there's a songwriter from Cape Breton named Gordy Sampson who now lives in Nashville, but he would come home every summer and run like a songwriting camp for emerging artists around the province.
Hmm.
But he went to Nashville and has had huge success. He wrote like Jesus Take the Wheel and
Oh wow.
yeah, just like huge songs. So having him sort of like come home to Nova Scotia every summer and be playing shows and sort of like showing us the ropes of co-writing and the Nashville sort of style of co-writing really sparked my interest in like, oh wow, I love to do this. Like not only do I love to write songs for myself, but I love like getting in a room with another artist and helping them tell their story. So the whole time I was at university, I was like writing for other artists and with other artists. And that's when I met my two songwriter friends, Carlton Stone and Dylan Guthrie, who we went on to form a band called Port Cities.
Hmm.
And that was kind of like three songwriters, three-part harmonies, like folk pop kind of stuff. And that was a lot of fun. We toured around Canada and did some stuff in Europe and the UK for, five years or so. And then that over the course of that time, I realized like, I don't know if this is what I want to do forever, but I definitely want to explore the songwriting and production side of things more. So then I did a an internship in Nashville with an amazing producer down there called Paige Blue.
Oh cool.
Um, yeah, I spent a bunch of time there really working on my production chops. And then the pandemic hit, and I came back to Nova Scotia, and that's when I kind of started working on my own solo project again, which was a lot of fun.
Wow. Okay, so you're in Nashville when the pandemic hit?
Yeah, I got home like I think it was like March 7th, and and Nashville got hit with like a crazy tornado.
Oh, and
Then
then
I
a
get home.
bomb. It was
Oh,
bad. Yeah.
it's been a
I
wild year.
I moved to my family and we moved to Nashville like 6 months ago.
Oh
From
wow.
San Diego, from Southern California, and it was like all this stuff had happened. We're like, what are we doing?
Oh,
But it's great. We love it here. It's amazing.
it's such an awesome city. You guys are liking it?
Yeah, we love it here. We love it. So, it was a great move, but it was just like we already knew we were gonna come here, and then it was like, oh my gosh, there's a bomb. Oh my gosh, there's this gnarly tornado. Like COVID, and then it was
Oh,
like, you know, then everything froze over for a while. Like it was just pretty brutal, but
oh.
we enjoy it. So well, do you mind talking about the band at all? Like, I mean, did you finish, like, was that something that like started to gain success when you had finished going to university, or like what's the timeline wise like with that?
Yeah. Well, as I was finishing university, we actually did a tour as like three singer-songwriters, like a songwriter circle kind of tour just around
Hmm.
the Maritimes. And that was like a lot of fun. And we all just kind of like had written all these songs together and in different combinations. So we'd be like singing harmonies every night in these shows. So at the end of that tour, we thought like, oh, why don't we just start one band instead of the three of us having like our separate projects? So that's when we started. And then basically like the next 5 years after university was just like full steam ahead. We did a few singles and a full length album that we recorded in Nashville actually, and just toured like nonstop. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of great opportunities, and I learned so much. But just kind of felt like it had run its course for me, and there was other things I wanted to pursue.
Sure. I mean, yeah, you guys had some success. You got a bunch of awards. Like, I mean, you had some hit songs. What was it like, kind of seeing that success?
Oh, it was so cool. Like it was amazing. Like hearing our songs make their way to people, and sort of get responses from people that our songs were meaningful in their lives, and of course getting to travel, see all kinds of places I would have never seen otherwise. Like it was definitely an amazing experience.
You guys were signed? Did you get signed to a label or no?
We had like an independent label, that, but we were distributed through Warner Canada.
Oh, okay. What was it like getting that deal? Like, and do you remember, telling your dad about it? Obviously, he's a huge supporter of what you're doing, and
Oh yeah, that like my family and friends have just always been so supportive of the music stuff, which I just feel so lucky for because, you know, it takes a very special family to encourage this crazy lifestyle. But yeah, it's been an exciting few years for sure.
that's cool. That's really cool. And so you go to Nashville, you decide you want to do the solo thing. And what was the first song you put out as a solo artist?
It was actually pretty recently. It was June 4th. I put out my first single called Girlfriends.
Oh, that was your
Um,
first one. You have a couple
yeah,
songs on Spotify. So you have Good News, which has like 7 million plays, and another song called Lose You to Love Me.
yeah, those are like sort of collaborations with different Canadian artists that I've like written with and worked with. So Good News is with a rapper named Classified,
Mhm.
who's an awesome like producer, writer, rapper. And Lose You to Love You is actually Lose You to Love Me is a cover with two other Canadian artists named Ria May and Rose
Oh,
Cousins. So Girlfriends was my first like solo Breagh Isabel song.
wow. Okay. And
Yeah.
when was that song written?
It was actually written a while ago. It was written in 29, like the summer of 2019. And a lot of the songs for this new project are sort of like songs that I've like had assembled for the past year or so. I'm obviously still writing, but there's always been like the odd song that I've written over the past few years that just felt like so personal and so much my story that I kind of couldn't imagine it coming out any other way than like through my artist project.
Mhm. Was that something that you struggled with the band at all? Like writing songs and then saying, like I might hold this back for myself, or is that never a
Mm.
thought?
Yeah, it was definitely tricky sometimes with the band because it was like three lead singers. So like finding something all three of us could sort of say that made sense, like it was like because we all a lot of the songs were like duets
Uh-huh.
or multiple voices singing together. So it's just interesting, like thinking about songs in that way and then thinking about songs and like, you know, I can say whatever I want and it's coming from me, so it's gonna make sense, of course. Like switching that creative mindset to like 100% creative control versus like more of a collaborative approach.
Hmm.
But I love both, obviously. I love like working with other folks, but it's kind of fun to have the one voice sometimes.
Sure, sure. So Girlfriends is your first one. You said you wrote it
Mhm.
in summer of 2019. Are
Yeah.
you in Nashville like recording what's to come for you as far as the solo record and then COVID happens? Like where were you when that all happened?
In 2019, actually, I was at a songwriting camp in Canada. I had just done like my first trip to Nashville, doing like the internship, production internship. So
Uh-huh.
I had like just left Nashville, come back to Canada, written that song, and then went back to Nashville like in the fall, of 2019, I guess, and kind of was there until the pandemic hit. So yeah, mostly like producing and writing in Nashville. Um, and then thinking like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do this solo project early 2020. I was like, I've got some songs. I'm gonna stay here and work with a producer in Nashville and get some work done. And then of course COVID changed all of those plans. But the past year just been based on the East Coast, but obviously doing a lot of Zoom writing, and Girlfriends was produced like 100% on Zoom back and forth. Like my
Wow.
producer is in Nashville, I'm in Halifax, so I was like recording my vocals in my closet and laying down piano at home and sending it to him. Like it was definitely an exercise in using the music technology of Zoom and FaceTime and all that fun stuff.
Was it hard to do that? I would imagine.
I think it probably took longer than it would have if we had been able to just be in the same city and go to a studio and get it done. But maybe that's for the best. Like I feel like we really kind of spent the time making sure the production was right and the vocals were perfect and everything, because everything was so like back and forth. And at that time, I was in no rush to sort of put out any sort of music. It was everything was just so up in the air about what would happen with the pandemic. So
Right,
we just
right.
really took our time with it, which I think was for the best.
Hmm. Do you think that record would have turned out differently if you would have done it in person or
Hmm.
COVID didn't
I
happen?
I didn't really think about that, but maybe it would have, like being being in person, maybe it would have influenced it in a different way.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So you guys finished that song and then you put it out pretty recently. Do you have
Hmm.
other records that are complete and ready to go, or what? How did you spend your pandemic?
Yeah, I've just been doing like a lot of writing and production stuff for my little home studio. I have a few other songs that are kind of ready to go and working towards an EP for 2022. But I also signed my first publishing deal over the pandemic with a company based out of Nashville called Concord.
I
So
love
that's
they have some great artists on Concord.
Oh, they're amazing. Yeah. So that's been like super fun. Like at the start of the pandemic, I was at home in my home studio being like, oh gosh, what is the next year gonna look like for me? Like, you know, I'd been doing so much traveling and writing with other folks. Like, am I just gonna have to stay at home and just write by myself for the next year? But luckily through them, I've been sort of like meeting lots of our other writers and artists and producers and been pretty busy with that side of things as well. So that's been awesome.
That is cool. So how did tell me about signing with them? Was that I mean, obviously a big moment? They got a lot of huge artists that they represent.
Yeah, they've been growing so much too. Like when I
Hmm.
I think I was offered my deal like in the spring of 2020. I just signed it like at Christmas time, but at the time they were kind of like, I feel like obviously still a big company, but sort of on this like below the kind of big
Yeah, they're on a
majors.
smaller scale, sure.
Yeah, and now I feel like in the past year they've grown so much since then. But I did like a Zoom writing camp in the spring and just wrote a couple of the songs and produced them. And oh yeah, there's one song that I like sang and produced. And I think the team really liked the tune and liked my voice and just reached out and like normally I think they would want me to be in like Nashville or LA or whatever, but because I'm kind of like can produce from home,
Hmm.
they were interested in that. Like I think seeing that, you can write on Zoom and sing it and produce a song from your house, like you can kind of do it all from home. You don't necessarily have to live in one of those cities. Although I obviously plan to get back to
Hmm.
Nashville and spend as much time there as I can in the next little while. But yeah, so they just they liked what I was up to and offered me a co-pub deal, which was awesome. So I was super
Wow.
excited. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that this is all based off of a camp that you're in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And then do they set you up with other artists? I know they have like, St. Vincent and like local natives and I don't know how, but they found me like they have just a plethora of artists from all different genres. And
Definitely. Yeah.
how does that work? Do they set you up with somebody or like what do they expect of you besides writing hit songs?
Well, right now, like when I signed with them, I kind of just wanted to be writing as much as possible. So they basically book me like 3 days a week. So the past year has just been meeting like so many artists from all over the place, like, New York, Nashville, LA, the UK, like they have a office in the UK and an office in Germany. So just like tons of writing for like other kind of emerging artists. And also writing for my project. And yeah, they do really well at the sync side of things too.
Mhm.
So within the first few months of working with them, they had like synced songs that I wrote and produced to like Grey's Anatomy and Batwoman and all these crazy shows that, and like in my mind, as someone who loves Grey's Anatomy, I was like so geeked about that. So um, that was definitely a cool aspect of the publishing deal that was really exciting off the bat too. So
Sure.
yeah.
What was it like watching the show and hearing your song?
Oh, it's so cool. Yeah. And they played on Grey's Anatomy, they played my song as like the last scene. So the whole episode, I'm like, oh no, did it get cut? Like, because,
Right.
like with Sync, it's like you kind of hear, okay, they want to use the song and you all sign off, but you kind of don't know until pretty close to when the episode airs, like if it's 100% for sure, because things get edited out so last minute.
Uh-huh.
So we got the word like, okay, it's definitely going to be in this episode on this date. So I'm watching it, but as the minutes are ticking by, I'm like, has there been a mistake? Are they not going to use the song? But then, yeah, it was so cool. It was in this like very epic scene at the end of the episode, so that was awesome.
That is really cool.
Yeah,
With your new song with Girlfriends, tell me a little bit about that song.
sure. Well, it's kind of, I guess it's about growing up and falling in love for the first time at a time when there kind of wasn't any young people around me who were like out
Mhm.
as queer, gay, and yeah, just kind of dealing with that and looking back at that time in my life.
Very cool. Yeah, I can imagine that being really hard.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to like put myself back in the shoes of being in high school and feeling all those feelings for the first time and figuring out how to navigate that.
Mhm. And so that's gonna be part of a project coming out, and you said 2022?
Yeah, working on my first EP.
Very cool. What about
Mm,
plans for playing live? I don't know how that's gonna look in the next year or so. Like, have you had a chance to
mm.
play out at all?
A little bit, yeah. I just did a few like acoustic opening act sets for a Canadian artist named Ria May, who's really amazing. So I did like a short run of shows with her, and then actually this past weekend I just did my first two like full band shows with the new music at like some festivals around here. So that was like super fun, and yeah, I kind of wasn't sure how I feel about going back to the playing live thing, but it felt really good. So looking
That
forward to doing more of that.
That is awesome. And thank you so much, Rhea, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this was so fun.
I do have one more question for you before I let you go. Do
Sure.
you have any advice for aspiring artists?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say find your people, like find the people around you who inspire you and support you and you can collaborate because I think this industry is just so wild and topsy-turvy that you kind of need your crew around you who can help you along the way. So that would be my advice.